The Ghost of Highway 287 Part 2. The hours bled into one another, each mile a testament to John's growing desperation. The highway stretched before him, an endless black ribbon unspooling into the storm, a path leading deeper into the heart of his nightmare. The rain intensified, the wind a howling banshee, threatening to rip the truck apart. The world outside was a swirling vortex of darkness and rain, a chaotic canvas painted with fear. John's eyes, bloodshot and strained, darted between the road and the mirrors, constantly searching for any sign of the woman or the dark figure he knew was lurking in the shadows. His mind, frayed and exhausted, was a whirlwind of terrifying images, a chaotic montage of the woman's pleading face, the dark figure's menacing silhouette, and the crumbling house he had seen in his visions. The images were becoming more vivid, more real, like they were memories being forced into his mind. He felt a growing sense of paranoia, a feeling that he was being watched from every angle, that the trees lining the highway were filled with unseen eyes. He imagined the dark figure, its form shifting and changing, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent, watching him from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He heard whispers in the wind, faint, chilling voices that spoke his name, that promised him a fate worse than death. The truck, once a symbol of his freedom, now felt like a metal cage, a trap from which there was no escape. The engine's hum, once a comforting sound, now resonated with a sinister undertone, a low growl that seemed to mock his fear. The dashboard lights, usually a reassuring glow, now cast eerie shadows, transforming the cab into a haunted space. He began to hallucinate, seeing fleeting glimpses of the woman in the periphery of his vision, her face contorted in terror, her hands reaching out to him, pleading for help. He saw the dark figure, its form shifting and growing, its eyes burning like coals, its presence a suffocating weight. He saw the crumbling house, its windows dark and empty, its walls stained with an unseen horror. The visions were becoming more frequent, more intense, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. He felt a growing sense of detachment, like he was losing his grip on his sanity, like he was becoming a ghost himself. He felt the woman's fear, her overwhelming sense of loss, and the dark figure's hunger, its insatiable desire to consume. He saw flashes of the woman's life, a life filled with sorrow and fear, a life haunted by the dark figure. He saw her running through the forest, her heart pounding, her breath ragged, her eyes filled with terror. He saw her hiding in the crumbling house, her body trembling, her voice a silent scream. He saw her standing by the dark well, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with despair. He saw the dark figure, its form shifting and changing, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent, its presence a suffocating weight. He saw it stalking the woman, its movements fluid and predatory, its hunger insatiable. He saw it whispering to her, promising her a fate worse than death, promising to take her back to the darkness. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, a feeling that he had to help the woman, that he had to stop the dark figure. He knew that he was being drawn into a battle between light and darkness, a battle for the woman's soul. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to fight, to protect, to survive. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his body tense, his mind focused. He was no longer just a driver on a lonely highway, but a warrior in a battle against the forces of darkness. He knew that he had to face his fear, that he had to confront the dark figure, that he had to break the cycle of terror. He saw a sign in the distance, a flickering neon sign that read, Old Mill Road. He remembered the woman's words. He wants to take me back. He knew that the crumbling house, the dark well, and the twisted tree were located on Old Mill Road. He knew that this was where the battle would take place. He turned the truck onto Old Mill Road, a narrow, winding road that disappeared into the darkness. The road was overgrown with weeds. The trees lining the road were gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, a silence that was more terrifying than any sound. He drove slowly, cautiously, his headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. He saw the crumbling house in the distance, its windows dark and empty, its walls stained with an unseen horror. He saw the dark well, its mouth gaping open like a hungry maw. He saw the twisted tree, its branches reaching up to the sky, its form a grotesque parody of life. He stopped the truck in front of the crumbling house, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the dark figure was waiting for him, that it was watching him from the shadows. He knew that the woman was trapped inside the house, her spirit bound to the place of her torment. He stepped out of the truck, the rain a cold, stinging assault on his face. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. He walked towards the crumbling house, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He felt a coldness seeping into his bones, a chill that was not from the rain. He reached the front door, a rotting wooden door that hung precariously on its hinges. He pushed the door open and stepped into the darkness. The air inside the house was thick and stale, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. A suffocating silence pressed in on John, broken only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain on the rotting roof overhead. The darkness was profound, a tangible entity that seemed to cling to him, whispering secrets he didn't want to hear. He fumbled for his flashlight, the beam cutting a narrow swathe through the gloom, revealing peeling wallpaper, cobweb-laden furniture, and the ghostly outlines of forgotten lives. He moved cautiously, his boots crunching on the debris-strewn floorboards, each step echoing through the empty rooms. The flashlight beam danced across the walls, illuminating faded photographs, cracked mirrors, and the skeletal remains of what might have been a child's toy. A sense of profound sadness washed over him, a feeling of loss that wasn't his own, yet resonated deep within his soul. He moved deeper into the house, following an unseen pull, a sense of urgency that urged him onward. He found himself in a large central room, the remnants of a grand parlor. The air here was colder, heavier, charged with an unseen energy. The flashlight beam landed on a dark stain on the floor, a stain that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light. A chill ran down his spine, a primal fear that warned him he was in the presence of something ancient and malevolent. A whisper, thin and chilling, echoed through the room, a voice that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "You shouldn't have come," it hissed, the words laced with a dark amusement. "She's mine now." John's heart pounded in his chest, his breath catching in his throat. He raised the flashlight, the beam trembling, searching for the source of the voice. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice barely a whisper. A dark shape materialized in the shadows, a hulking figure that seemed to coalesce from the very darkness itself. Its eyes, glowing with a malevolent red light, pierced through the gloom, fixing on John with an intensity that made his blood run cold. "I am the one who claims what is mine," the figure rasped, its voice a guttural growl that resonated with ancient power. "She belongs to me, and now, so do you." The figure moved, its movements fluid and predatory, its form shifting and changing, like a shadow given life. It reached out a clawed hand, its fingers long and skeletal, its touch promising unimaginable horror. John stumbled back, his flashlight beam wavering, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the walls. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to fight, to survive. He knew that he couldn't run, that he had to face the darkness, that he had to protect the woman, even if she was no longer of this world. He remembered the woman's words. "He wants to take me back." He knew that the dark figure was trying to drag her spirit back into the darkness, to bind her to this place of torment. He knew that he had to break the cycle, to free her from her prison. He thought of the dark well, the twisted tree, the places he'd seen in the visions. He knew they were connected to the figure, that they were sources of its power. He had to find a way to sever that connection. He noticed a faint glow emanating from a doorway at the far end of the room. He moved towards it, the dark figure following close behind, its presence a suffocating weight. He passed through the doorway and found himself in a small, cramped room, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and stagnant water. In the center of the room, a dark well gaped open, its depths shrouded in shadow. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from within, a ghostly light that pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. He could hear the faint sound of weeping, a mournful cry that echoed from the depths of the well. He knew that the woman's spirit was trapped within the well, bound to the dark figure's power. He knew that he had to find a way to free her, to break the hold that the darkness had on her. The dark figure loomed behind him, its presence a suffocating weight, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. "You cannot save her," it hissed, its voice a guttural growl. "She is mine." John turned to face the figure, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. "You're wrong," he said, his voice trembling but firm. "She's not yours. She's free." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. A locket he had found on the floor of the truck. A locket that had belonged to the woman. He held it up to the light, and a faint, ethereal glow emanated from it, a light that seemed to push back the darkness. The dark figure recoiled, its form flickering and wavering, its eyes burning with rage. "What is that?" it snarled. "It's a symbol of her life," John said, his voice gaining strength. "A symbol of her love, her hope, her freedom." He tossed the locket into the well, and a blinding light erupted from within, a radiant burst of energy that filled the room, pushing back the darkness, shattering the shadows. The dark figure screamed, its form dissolving into smoke, its voice a fading echo of rage and despair. The weeping sound ceased, replaced by a gentle sigh, a sound of release, of freedom. The ethereal glow from the well intensified, then faded, leaving behind a sense of peace, a feeling of closure. John turned and saw the woman standing in the doorway, her form translucent, her face radiant, her eyes filled with gratitude. She smiled, a gentle, loving smile, and then she faded away, her spirit finally at rest. He walked out of the house, the rain still falling, but the darkness had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace. He knew that he had faced the darkness, and he had won. He knew that he would never forget the woman, or the night he faced the ghost of Highway 287. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.